Welcome to Inside Data Centers, the podcast from Raging Wire. We take a behind-the-scenes look at the home of the Internet and the people that work there. Inside Data Centers is brought to you by Raging Wire. They run massive data centers in North America for big cloud companies and the Fortune 1000. And as part of NTT, is one of the largest data center companies in the world.
My name is John Gilroy, and I'll be your moderator today for this episode of Inside Data Centers, the podcast from Raging Wire. In today's podcast, we'll talk about one of the hottest technology topics in the world, how companies can drive revenue with artificial intelligence. Joining me today are Dave Kops, CEO of HyperGiant Sensory Sciences. In 2017, Dave sold his AI startup BrainSpace as part of a $2.8 billion roundup. Also, we have Ryan Fontaine, the CEO and co-founder of Citadel Analytics, a Dallas-based artificial intelligence company that has generated significant momentum since its startup. First, a little background on our guests, both of whom were inspired to pursue the advancement of artificial intelligence after some dire personal medical situations. Dave, let's hear this story. This is a good one.
I guess is this the MRI picture? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have some people that know me well. I have a black and white MRI picture of my brain in my closet that I see every morning when I walk in. It's,
what a good story. I love this story. Keep talking.
Well, I was diagnosed as epileptic when I was really young, like 4 years old, and through my life I was somewhat controlled by medication, but then I had to have surgery, brain surgery after college. And so I had to, it was a traumatic experience, but it's one of those things where you go into something like that and you have to really think that, what if it didn't work out?
Yeah.
And so, the good news is everything went great and everything went well. But I keep that in my closet as a reminder, that every day is a gift, and that I don't try not to take it for granted. So helps me kind of realize that, the small things aren't that important, to focus on the bigger things and then helping other people and lifting people up. And so it's just my daily reminder.
Well, Ryan, hard to top that story, the CEO of Citadel Analytics. Ryan, your company began with a crash, literally. Now, how did that happen?
Well, I was going down the road, and a teenage driver wanted to whip a U-turn across 6 lanes of traffic, and they never looked behind them. So my Denali slammed into their car, and fortunately I swerved at the last minute, so everyone lived through the accident. But I ended up getting some pretty significant injuries, and it changed the course of my life, much like Dave had his experience, whereas before I was more on the physical IT side, networking, installations, things like that. I was no longer able to do that as I was basically permanently disabled from that kind of work. So as I'm healing up and going through several years of rehab and multiple surgeries and all of that fun stuff, I really started to notice that the insurance companies, the hospitals, the outpatient clinics, the physical therapy, the doctor's office, no one was really sharing any kind of information, any kind of data, and they definitely weren't doing it in a way that would lead to better outcomes. Even if they could see the same MRI or they could see the same X-ray, there really wasn't a lot of intelligent data sharing between the organizations. And this really kind of sparked my interest in data and artificial intelligence and machine learning, because it was one of those, there has to be a better way of doing this. And it was really, much like Dave, sparked by my own personal need for better outcome when it came to my own recovery of, why isn't my doctor talking with my surgeon? Why isn't the physical therapist talking with the surgeon? And so that's really how Citadel Analytics began, was trying to find better ways to use data for better outcomes for patients and businesses and all sorts of intelligent data services.
Let's go back to Dave here. So, Dave, how did you find your way blazing such a successful path with artificial intelligence?
Oh, my path is a strange one for sure.
But successful.
Well, you fall into things. I like to say I'm falling forward all the time. But, in college, I was a frustrated business major, so I wasn't really satisfied with the curriculum. So I innately started creating my own path. I was just dropping in on classes, so I was dropping in on classes I wasn't signed up for. And one of those was a course on corporate culture, the idea of having business culture study. And I was really fascinated by that. I ended up staying in the course the whole time until the teacher kind of came up to me and said, who are you? And, I don't see you on my roll. And I told her I was just and we ended up being great friends. And I ended up changing my major to industrial anthropology. So I was the first person to graduate from UNT with a degree focused in industrial anthropology. I think that kind of set my course as an entrepreneur. I kind of realized early on that I wasn't a status quo guy, that I really needed to kind of create my own path. My friends have been telling me for a long time I'm unemployable, because I just don't, I'm usually the person that's trying to think of a better way all the time. And so I'm not good in environments where you're told to do something and to do it a certain way. So I learned over the years they were right. I'm one of the unemployables. So I spent the next 15 years building and selling 2 companies based on machine learning and artificial intelligence. And I think that journey, I've been truly fortunate to work with just amazing people. I'm really proud of what we built together. The first company was Ingenium. It was a semantic search company. I like to tell people we were doing AI before it was cool. And ended up selling that company for about $32 million. And then right around at the end of that company, I started BrainSpace, which has been a real journey in my life. It's a really amazing company that you mentioned earlier. We sold to Xterra about a year and a half ago, part of a $2.8 billion roll-up. And, I think just you learn a lot of things in startups like that. I think that company had a meager start. We had 6 employees, but we had this incredible story, where we were, I had a situation where LexisNexis, the largest legal publisher in the world, was putting out an RFP for semantic search. And, we were 6 employees in a garage, and I decided to go ahead and put in for the RFP, but more as a way to kind of understand where we were as a company, what we need to work on. We had no intention of winning it, because we were competing against literally the global giants with thousands of employees and billions in revenue. And short story was we ended up winning. We actually won, and they're still a client of BrainSpace to this day. But I think that was the company that kind of taught me a lot of lessons in persistence and possibility. The things are really impossible to or not, and just always putting your neck out there and try over and over and over again. But it's been a fun ride so far.
So Ryan, tell us about the space that your artificial intelligence company plays in.
Well, much like Dave, we play pretty much anywhere where data needs to be intelligently, processed. And so there really is no one field that AI plays in. There are some that are better than others. I know Dave mentioned semantic search, which is a very good one to be in. Digital marketing is another. We typically do some digital marketing deployments, mainly because the data is very clean already from Google or Microsoft for Bing. Even Amazon ads, it's all very clean data. So with a lot of smaller clients and medium clients, that's kind of where the low-hanging fruit is for them, and they can see an instant ROI practically on their deployments of those systems. But one of the things that we focus on is what data do you have, what data do you have access to, and how good is the data? And once we figure that out with our clients, typically that's a solution. That's what leads us to a good solution for our clients. So we'll technically play in any space, but we typically started when we first were a startup was the digital marketing because of the purity of the data, and that's something that I'm sure we'll discuss a little bit later in the podcast here. But that is where we started, and we've since branched out to healthcare, defense. Even self-driving cars for a hobby. Those are always fun moments. So there's quite a few different fields that we play in, much like Dave's company probably plays in multiple different fields as well.
I come over here in the subway, and Ryan, let me say, get in the subway next to me, and someone turns to you and says, well, what is a data scientist? So do you have a quick 10-word answer for that? Or what is a data scientist anyway?
A data scientist is someone who makes ordinary data intelligent and has outcomes that are hidden in the data, and they find them. They're basically people that are fascinated to the question why. Why does this work? Why does this not work? Why did this campaign for ads over here work and this one didn't? They really just try to answer why, and they never accept because that's how we've always done it, because that's always worked, because they don't accept those fixed answers. Much like Dave mentioned earlier, we're pretty much always the entrepreneurial type and the ones that always want to understand if there's a better way, how do we accomplish it?
I'm sure you're familiar with Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. That's where you start, isn't it?
Yes.
Great. So, Dave, can you describe the power of artificial intelligence and maybe compare it with our little human intelligence we have working here?
Well, yeah, it's funny. That's the big question in the media right today. And I think out of the gate, it's really important to state that we're still a long ways away from what we call AGI and ASI, so artificial general intelligence and artificial superintelligence, where an AI surpasses not only the intelligence of a person, but of all people. We're a long ways away from that. I think that it gets dramatized a little bit in the media. So today, we're innovating in many areas with what we call narrow AI. A narrow AI is an AI that's particularly good at one thing, for instance, like Maps or Siri or Cortana, things like that, or when you look into the market, there's other things that are other AIs that are being created that do one thing really, really, what's trained to do one thing really well. We call it a narrow intelligence. And that's really where we are today. There's a lot of narrow intelligence being created right now. Now, that being said, these narrow intelligences are powerful, right? So what's really happening today is that we're augmenting. I think, we talk about replacing people and replacing jobs and things like that. And certainly that's the case in some areas. But for the most part, what's happening today is that we're augmenting people. We're augmenting people both physically and cognitively. So AI is helping us do our jobs better, faster, more effectively, right? So companies are figuring out how to, increase levels of automation, lower costs, raise efficiency, raise productivity by augmenting people with AI. And so, there's things like, a narrow AI, a good example of a narrow AI I was reading about a while back is one on lung tumors. We've created a way to detect lung tumors with a deep learning AI. And now that detection system can find lung tumors better than any doctor in the world. It also figured out that there were patterns that happened on the side of the tumor that could tell it what kind of a tumor it was, which doctors never figured out. And because the AI can see at such a breadth, right? If you can imagine seeing, millions of things at the same time and learning from that, patterns start to emerge with AI that are not possible for a person to see. And that's why it's important for us to want to collaborate and augment ourselves with AI.
Well, I like the whole data scientist and the tumors and everything else, but I got to ask you the Tom Cruise question, and that is, show me the money. show me the money here. So what are the practical applications of AI that companies use to generate revenue or save costs?
I think the answer is really, it's about automation. So when you ask where's the money, I don't think there's an industry in the world that will not be affected by AI. So that sounds like a broad answer to your question, but it's true. AI is really a very rare occurrence, in technology. It's an apex technology that can literally affect every industry. And so it's not really a question of which industry is going to be most affected by AI. It's how are all industries going to be affected by AI. And so, you can go down a list and think of which ones probably have the most opportunity, right, for AI to make a difference. And I would say that things like healthcare and things like that. But for me personally, what we've been doing in our companies and helping other companies with our AI is we in my last company, we built an AI that had the ability, it solved the problem of these large litigations, like where you had these big digital investigations where hundreds of millions of documents and emails are put into a bucket and people are trying to figure out who said what when, like when the BP oil spill happened or things like that. And so our technology was able to literally consume, to read those 100 million documents very, very quickly, 3,000 documents a second, and start to understand what's being said in all of them. So it built like an AI that was, we called it a brain, hence the name BrainSpace of the company. But we built an AI that had the ability to kind of form those documents into an intelligence that people could use then to find answers faster. And so that technology helped, companies shorten litigation cycles and get to answers literally, 200, 300%, 4% faster than before. Mm-hmm. So it's a great example of how an AI can save money. So that was my personal experience with that. Our current company, Sensory Sciences, is engaged in the idea of building an AI for the physical world. So how can we start to use AI to understand, to see and sense the world like we do? If we can do that, then we can have an AI that we can now work with to start to automate some of our processes, our physical processes. So building an AI that not only sees things, but actually understands what's going on. so we can then work with the AI to raise our levels of efficiency and productivity by getting higher and higher levels of automation.
Ryan, I have a friend in the aerospace industry, and when these new planes come up, they have sensors everywhere. When they come down, they have like a terabyte of data. I mean, we're getting just deluged. This data is just exploding everywhere, isn't it, Ryan?
It is. Data is exploding everywhere, and it's only going to explode at a much faster rate because while we are not necessarily at the peak of human-created data, we are definitely, say, in the 8th inning of how much data humans are going to create. We've got video, audio, we've got text documents, we've got emails going back and forth, but the growth rate of that is slowing, and it's mainly because we're already almost all online. Yes, there are some parts of the world that aren't quite as much online as we are, but it's not a huge data growth. Where the big data growth is going to come in is the sensor data that is going to be coming in with IoT and 5G. You're going to have sensors every intersection of the world, every railroad car, every train, every plane, every ship. And, you're talking on a ship, you're probably talking 100 different sensors sending data. So the IoT revolution is really nothing more than a data and really an automated data collection revolution. And that's really where AI and machine learning is going to be the most valuable, in our opinion, is because you don't have enough humans to process all of this data. You need AI or machine learning to make sense of all the good data that you're doing. And a good example of that is any kind of forecasting or prediction models for either sales or maintenance and transit. How much time is this box going to take to get from San Jose, California to Dallas, Texas? How long is this train going to be operable before it needs to be taken into the shop for repairs? How long is this ship going to be? Are there any problems I need to be aware of? All of those kind of data points are gathered by IoT. The problem is going to be processing all of that data, which, much like in Dave's example where they went through hundreds of millions of documents, it's the same kind of scenario. That's just too much data for humans to do, too much data and too many connections that need to be made. And IoT is a similar example, but just with sensor data. And so we already see this in healthcare a lot with MRIs and X-rays and electronic health records. It's just too much data for humans to make sense of very quickly. And this is really where AI and machine learning can help businesses not only grow, but have much better outcomes for their customers or patients if they're medical, and also their employees. One of the big benefits to AI and machine learning and successful deployments is the fact that the employees actually get much happier because they do see this AI and machine learning not as a replacement of them, but as an augmentation of them, that they can do what they're good at in the AI and machine learning can do kind of the boring, data processing work for them. And it really leads to much happier employees as well.
Ryan, I once drove through Missouri, and all the license plates there say, "Show me." And I want a story. Do you have a good, memorable customer story of how maybe one of your customers was surprised by how much AI, artificial intelligence, could help them?
I have several, but one of the ones that comes to mind is really they wanted an app that would help their distributors take photos of product displays and all of their product placements and things like that, not only for compliance, but they also wanted to kind of see where their products were being bought. Well, we took it one step further, and we had it where their customers could scan their receipts and get points for a reward system. Well, all of those photos and all of that data went through some of our deep learning algorithms, and we started basically telling them where their products were being sold and things like that, because they'd lose sight of when it went to the distributor from their factories. The distributor would report the broad sales, but it wouldn't report their specifics. And so what ended up happening is they would get all this data, and they ended up getting better marketing partnerships out of it because they would see what their customers are buying alongside of their other products. So let's say they were buying it, and they were buying also, say, a Pepsi 12-pack. They could reach out to Pepsi and say, hey, this product is selling a lot with yours. Can we do something together? They would also see what vendors were actually selling the most, and they would see what product mix is selling the most in certain regions. So it really gave them a lot of data where they could then make outcomes and ship certain products to certain regions rather than relying on just a distributor data. They went out and can basically complete the data picture on what is selling where, why, and how, and it really it improved their sales quite a bit. Unfortunately, almost all of our clients are under NDA, so I can't name the client. But they're a very large Fortune 1000 company, and they've done very well with it. And that's kind of getting to the augmentation. It just augmented the ability of their distributors and their distributing personnel to give them the data to close the loop and really see what's going on at a very deep level and a very low resistance from the workforce. They didn't really have to do any more work, and it was a pretty cool tool for them, and they enjoyed it a lot.
Hey, Dave, any good stories out of HyperGiant Sensory Sciences?
Well, we're starting now, so most of my stories are what I've done in my previous company. But I think some of the ones that come to mind for me, I think you have those ones you look back on you'll never forget. And one of those was with BrainSpace. We were actually had a meeting with the Department of Justice, and so when you think about doing digital investigations, the absolute top of that pyramid is the Department of Justice. And so we were talking with them about a deal, and the meeting was really interesting because it's the Department of Justice. They can't give you data, right? You have to just give them your technology, and they go behind a wall and they do things. And we had a meeting and showed them how to use the technology for 30 minutes, and then they literally took our tech, during the meeting, because we built the brain for them, on the data, but we couldn't see it, couldn't ask them questions or anything. And they left the meeting for half an hour, and they came back, and the most amazing thing happened. They kind of looked at us and said, well, we're going to close that case down. And we kind of looked at them and said, what? And they basically said that they found everything that they were looking for in those 30 minutes, that they'd been on this case for months and months and months. But in that 30 minutes, they found exactly what they were looking for and enough to close the case. Wow! So needless to say, we got the deal, right? Yeah. But that was the other one that I think I'll never forget. So we all did a lot of work with intelligence agencies around the world, and we were over in Europe working with a friendly intelligence agency, and they had our technology in place. And it's another one of those situations where it's dark to us. We don't know what they're doing because we can't see the data or anything like that. But we talked with a gentleman who was who used our technology on a particular data set he's been looking at for 7 years. And you think that's a long time, but when you have literally hundreds of millions of documents, if you don't have a way to see them, simultaneously and to understand patterns that are occurring simultaneously, you can look at that data set forever and never figure anything out. And so what we provided was this technology that literally built a visualization. So I think when our company really took off was when we built a visualization that allowed people to see and navigate information visually without any search, so they could literally take a mouse and they could navigate data. Wow. Almost like Google Earth. And the guy, the story he told us, he said, is that the guy that was working on the data cried. And first, and that was the first words out of his mouth. Of course, the first thing we're thinking, oh, what happened? And he said, no, it was a good thing. But he had this thought about, wow, I've been looking at this for so long, and the answers were right there. And so I think that kind of points to the power of AI, right? You can have data for a long time, but if you don't have the view into that data that allows you to see everything simultaneously and to measure everything simultaneously, then you can't find the answers that are there and that have been there forever. Now,
Ryan, earlier you said that artificial intelligence, AI, is going to impact every industry, every conceivable industry. Can you name a few that may not realize how much AI could help them make money or reduce cost?
I think at this point, because and Dave touched on this earlier, because of the hype in the media of AI, I think that most businesses and most industries now kind of realize that AI can potentially help them. They may not necessarily know how yet, though. And a good example, in my opinion, is healthcare, and one that's very overlooked. And everyone talks about how MRI, AI, and it can make better predictions on MRIs than most radiologists in the country, and that's very true. We've built a lot of models as well. I know Dave touched on one that they've built as well. And it's a big one that really kind of makes a lot of AI engineers and machine learning engineers tick, because it's one that you can literally say this helped save this person's life, and we all like that. I mean, we all want to contribute to the world. So it is one thing where that typically is an industry that kind of unites all of us. But one of the overlooked ones is the fact that when you add connectivity and you add the ability to, say, have an AI model deployed in Dallas, Texas, it can be open to doctors in some of the most remote areas of the world, and they can upload their MRIs, and all of a sudden you go from an MRI that is basically a Dallas highly trained radiologist to the middle of Africa, and now you can suddenly diagnose people around the world in some of the most remote locations without having to have a specialist on hand, and you can do it in minutes or even seconds, depending upon how fast they can upload the photos. So really it's about providing world-class care through AI and the internet all around the world, and you take the need of centralization of medicine away. So, typically the best care is usually located in big cities, New York, Boston, Dallas, LA, and obviously big cities around the world. This kind of democratizes it, and it really can be pretty much anywhere in the world. And you now have world-class access to world-class medicine just by using the AI algorithm instead.
I have a question for both you gentlemen, and maybe Dave can respond to this question quick. I was talking to the CEO of a local company called Cognilytica. His name is Ron Smeltzer, and he said that AI is not going to take away jobs. It could be a net gain in jobs. So Dave, what's your perspective? A net gain in jobs or a loss of jobs? If people are thinking about this.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm not one of the persons that's going to spread fear on job loss. Now, that being said, there are things that will go away, but this is not abnormal. When we have disruptive technologies, when they come into play, things change. We don't have operators plugging, physical wires into holes anymore. And so will there be job loss? Absolutely. I wouldn't want to be a truck driver, or taxi driver, or a retail clerk right now. But will the net be that we have more jobs? And I think the answer to that is absolutely yes. So this is something that we all. Here's what's different this time. I think why we see so much fear is that this time it's going to happen so much faster than it did before. What we're seeing with AI is an acceleration that we've never seen before in technology. And so, I kind of like to tell people that I think the next 10 years we're going to see 100 years of progress. And my grandmother saw horse-drawn carriage, automobile, plane flight, and space flight. But what we're going to see in that time frame that she saw is 10x that. Yeah. And so that's what's different. So I do think there's going to be a trough, so we are going to see kind of job loss before we see the gain. So you are going to see this trough, this dip before we see the gain. But I don't think that lasts too long. I think we're talking a few years, But the other side of the equation is fantastic. Lots of new possibilities, lots of new jobs, and things that we want to do and are having fun doing. The whole idea of a job is going to change. It's going to change. And it's not going to be what it is today. And I think the other side of that trough looks very, very positive.
So, Dave, where do you chime in on this one? Net loss, net gain of jobs?
Like I said, after the trough, I think it's a huge net gain. And not only more jobs, but jobs that people like to do and that we enjoy doing and that we have. I personally think that we're not going to have to work as much. One of the things that you probably will see within the next 5 years is that GDP will be absolutely affected by AI. You will see AI producing a difference in GDP, a rise in GDP, and that could even happen while jobs are going away, which is kind of weird. So you could see a jobless recovery initially, but I think after we get through that, I see a huge net gain in jobs. But it's important for us now to kind of see that. I was invited to go up and speak to members of the Senate about this topic, and I don't know that it got through to them, what I was saying, because I think they wait for the things to break before they want to fix them. But we could get ahead on this. Yeah. We could get ahead on this. We could start to look at what types of skills we need and skate to the puck a little bit more than we are now.
So let's say one of your colleagues is listening to this interview and maybe trying to dip their little toe into artificial intelligence and collecting data. And so maybe, Dave, you can chime in and tell us, what kind of tips do you have about how they can get their business off and running and using AI?
I think the first thing is about understanding AI. So, right now it's a really great business to have if you're doing AI consulting, because I do think that most businesses need help in understanding how AI can affect their business. as we kind of talked a little bit about before, I think the question that people should start asking themselves is look at your business and kind of with a very critical eye, look and ask yourself, where could I create automation? Where could I create higher and higher levels of automation that could lower my costs and increase my efficiencies and productivities? And how can I do that, right? So, because what you're really thinking about, the disruption is not AI itself. The disruption is automation. It's what AI causes, right? So look at Amazon, the poster child, right? I have a friend that works up there, and he's in the last 3 years, he's had 5 jobs there. They keep firing him and rehiring him because they keep automating things. But the important thing, and Ryan talked about this earlier, and I think this is a really important thing to think about, is that you look at Amazon right now, they probably have the highest levels of automation in any industry, but they have 50,000 open jobs. Why is that? Because with AI, we're creating new levels of abundance. We're able to create more with less. And when you create more business, more abundance, and you create more abundance, you need more people. And so that's why I don't see this job loss thing happening. But, if you're a business, start asking yourself, how can I start to create higher levels of automation in my business? What processes do I have where there's friction that's causing me to be slower than I could be? And I think that's kind of a general answer, but I think it's really important to everyone to start to take that critical eye towards their business and think about it with the lens of automation.
I'm sitting in a radio studio in Washington, D.C., and nobody in town, absolutely no one, predicted that the Nationals were going to win the World Series. And so, it's really, that was a 2% chance or something, 1% chance. So hard to predict the future. What about the future of AI? Dave or Ryan, you want to jump in and tell us exactly where the future, or is this like the Washington Nationals 6 months ago? No one knows. Is it unpredictable? What's the future? Dave or Ryan, want to jump in?
I very much, because I played baseball most of my life, I definitely did not see the Nationals winning. I picked the Astros. I actually took the Astros at the start of the year, so at least I got most of it right. But the thing with AI is that it's changing very quickly, and I think Dave would also attest that what we were doing 5 years ago in AI is not just outdated, it's incredibly outdated now. It's moving that fast, but yet for as fast as it's moving, we're only in maybe the top of the first inning of AI. The game probably just started. We're now playing it, whereas 10 years ago the game hadn't even started yet. We were doing warm-ups. So now the game has started, but we're in the top of the first. We're really doing the artificial narrow intelligence, the ANI, and we're developing very, very powerful AI systems, but they're basically one-trick ponies, where they can do one narrow task incredibly well and automate it very well. And Dave did very much properly talk about the automation aspect of AI, because that's really what it is. But these technologies are coming so fast, and we're getting new algorithms, new designs, new network systems all the time. And we're really seeing the very fast evolution of AI, and it's much faster than the internet evolved, much faster than mobility, much faster than even the computer itself. And that's going to lead to very substantial gains for people that deploy AI correctly, but it's also going to make everyone continually invest in AI, because at the end of the day, AI is a tool and a system, and much like any other system, if you don't keep upgrading it and keep updating it with what is basically the new standards, you're going to get left behind, even though you've deployed AI.
Wow.
AI 5 years ago will get crushed by AI deployed 5 days ago.
Wow. Yeah. So, Dave, coming to the end of the interview here, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I think I love what Ryan just said. I think that one of the evolutions that we're going to have to pay attention to as people is this evolution of trust with AI. We're going to experience and go through an evolution of trust, because we have a technology that as we start to combine more and more data, as Ryan was saying earlier, I think this fourth industrial revolution, I think, is going to be when AI and IoT come together, which is really kind of where we're focusing at HyperGiant Sensory Sciences. But I think people need to kind of realize that we are going to a place where AI will be more and more capable of doing things for us. So the question is, do you trust an AI that can do things for you, without you? And so we're going to have to start asking ourselves that question. So, I think a little story for you. I was doing a talk at a conference, classified conference, and I met another founder he's working with AI in quantum computing, and then I asked him, hey, what keeps you up at night? And we're just having a great conversation, and he looked at me and he said, what keeps me up at night is that we're soon approaching the day when we won't be able to even comprehend the level of questions our systems will be capable of answering.
Wow. And
I had to sit and think about that for a minute, but that's really where we're headed, that we're going to be so much more capable of solving problems that it's rapidly going to get to the point where we can do things that are beyond what we're capable of asking. Yeah. And so I think that's it's a scary and exciting thought. I think you have the dystopian or utopian AI people, and I put myself more on the utopian side. I know about the dystopian stuff, but I think sounds like both Ryan and I are at that side where what's possible with AI is so incredible and can make a better world. And so I think if I were to leave anybody with anything, is that pay less attention to the dystopian stuff and start to look at what's possible with AI and how we can create better lives for everybody.
Ryan, giving you the final word here. Want to chip in?
I will, and I agree with Dave that it's the utopian side is much better than the dystopian, and we're far more likely to be in the utopian one for quite a while because we are so far away from artificial general intelligence or artificial superior intelligence that we've got a long way to go before we have any real AI threats from that, so to speak. Terminator is the one we usually get asked, but we're a long way from that. But what I would leave the listeners with is the real power of AI is setting humans free. And what I mean by that is, let's take an example of one of our deployed solutions where we go out and we help a company find new customers that are like the customers that are their best performing. Well, right now, you'd have to have your salespeople going through, gathering data, gathering all sorts of information to try to find people that are like customer A. Well, we have algorithms will go out and we'll find the data, or if we'll go through the data of the client if they have it, and the algorithms will try to find what exactly is customer A. Not that they're a male or a female or, they're this position at a company, but what really are they? Was it a psychological bond that you guys have? Is it what kind of trigger is really what making customer A want to buy from your company? That's a lot of data. That's a lot of conclusions. And salespeople don't really want to do that. That's a lot of time that they're going to have to invest. By automating it, or at least semi-automating it, those salespeople now can go out and sell. Now they're doing what they want to do. So not only can you get a revenue boost from that because you have them actually going out and selling, but you get a huge boost in their productivity and their satisfaction because the tedious work does pay the bills, but the tedious work is now done by AI and machine learning, and it's no longer something that they dread. They don't dread having to go through lead lists. They don't dread having to go, how many cold calls am I going to do today? So you up the amount that they can do, and you also increase their satisfaction. So you're not going to have a lot of churn through your sales force, and you're probably going to have a pretty good uptick in sales from what we've seen from our clients that use that solution. But really, that's the power of AI, is augmenting your workforce. And by augmenting the boring stuff, the data processing, the data mining, all of that stuff that we do as humans, you really can set them free to do what humans are good at, which is creative solutions, bonding, and creating, social environments. That's really what we're good at that AI is not good at. And that's really what AI should be used for, to enhance your workforce for what humans are good at.
Well, gentlemen, looks like we're running out of time here. I'd like to thank our guests here, Dave Copps, CEO of HyperGiant Sensory Sciences, and Ryan Fontaine, CEO and co-founder of Citadel Analytics. Gentlemen, thank you very much for the interview.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Inside Data Centers, brought to you by Raging Wire. If you like what you heard, give us a review and don't forget to subscribe. Plus, to get the show notes and links to more information, go to ragingwire.com/podcasts.